Welcome to a new episode of Peel and Reveal, the podcast where we share stories about joy, purpose, and self-discovery. I'm Anneli Näs, and in this episode, I'm talking with Navid Zargham. Navid is a non-dual meditation teacher and the creator of Simran Meditation, a unique and direct approach to meditation. Unlike many other practices, it doesn't just aim to quiet the mind, it helps to bring clarity about the true nature of reality and the self. Navid's journey started in Iran, where he spent his early years during a time of political unrest and war. As a child, he fled to Sweden, where he faced major challenges adjusting to a new culture and dealing with personal trauma. These experiences ultimately sparked a deep curiosity about the human consciousness and the search for truth. In this episode, we get to hear the story and what inspired him to develop this method in the first place. Let's dive in. All right, welcome Navid.
Thank you for having me.
How are you today?
I'm fine. I actually, a couple of hours ago, had a very intense massage, which I feel is still doing stuff.
Oh wow, what type of massage?
I think it's called sports massage, but like deep tissue. Really intense. I mean, she's amazing, the woman who did the massage, and now I feel it's still working on me. Weird heat waves and all kinds of stuff and emotions coming up.
Oh, that's so interesting. So we'll see if that gives us extra effect today.
Let's see.
Yeah. But I like to start these episodes with how did you grow up? Who was little Navid?
Yeah, so I guess a big part of it is the first 5 years which I spent in Iran during quite dramatic times. My mother was involved politically against the regime in Iran, the Islamic Republic, and my father also, to a certain degree, involved, and it was quite dramatic now and then. At the same time, there was a war going on between Iran and Iraq, but I guess also funded by other interests.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, so this was going on, and was every now and then, in my experience, there was drama, because as children we're not aware of the news, but every now and then hiding in the cellar, hearing some bombings during the night or something. Or every now and then they left me in the mountains with another, a part of my relatives, which was a safer place during some episodes. So my memory personally is very scattered around this period. I don't have a clear timeline or anything like that, but I also didn't experience what most people would call much trauma from that part, from the war and difficulties. But I guess leaving Iran, which was again a big reason for leaving was this war and the Islamic regime. Leaving Iran and leaving my big part of my family, I came to Europe with only my mom. And leaving my father, leaving his huge family and my grandma and everything, I handled it very well, according to my mom. But I think it required me to transcend something in me, to be a good boy and to be fine with all of that. Even though it was not only bad, I think I had to close down some parts of me to be fine with what was going on, or to focus on the parts of me that were fine with what was going on. So that was a period which I don't remember so much as difficult, but I can see the effects later as we started to settle in Sweden.
How old were you when you fled?
Just before I turned 6, so 5.5 or so. We came to a couple of countries in Europe and East Germany, West Germany, eventually in Motala, Sweden, in a förläggning, and then a couple of different cities in Sweden before we started to settle down. And I found some letters I wrote back then. There is an article in Mariestadstidningen, which they wrote about when my father came to Sweden to try to live with us, and he stayed for 1.5 years seeking permanent residency. And when he didn't get it, they made an article about that in the newspaper, how I was living with him and he had to go back to Iran and I had to go live with my mom somewhere in Sweden. So around this period, I have more clear memories of the difficulties, and I can see the patterns where when I had my whole family, I was behaving much better, and when I didn't have them, I was fighting in school. And then I
Interesting.
think some of the other traumas from earlier childhood started to express as I got older, like into like 9, 10, like
Yeah.
when I could fight more in school, and I could be a bully or the opposite, being bullied, like all of these things. Like it was so obvious when my full family was around that I didn't do any of that. And when they
Interesting.
weren't, I was fighting. So consciously, I don't have so much clear memories of much difficulties from that period. But I remember some, you know, the sense of having to be a good boy for this to function. And it was not, only being a good boy to be accepted. It felt like survival.
Okay.
So these are, let's say, the parts of my childhood which I can sense led eventually to a kind of seeking, a deeper seeking into life, and opened me up to explore more, like, why do I have these behaviors, as I started to become conscious of them? Why all these fears? And so that, I would say, set the tone of the beautiful suffering. The very, I mean, today I'm thankful for all of this, no matter how much pain they can still cause in some ways, that they made me not be fine with the superficial stuff that was taught, like in school and in life in general, psychology and spirituality, like all the superficial stuff that we dance around. I was like, none of that works on me. Like, and it pushed me to go deep into things, to find, oh, okay, here lies freedom. So
That's very interesting. So I have two questions just about this, like the part that you've shared now. So the first one is like, I mean, there are people still like fleeing today and are coming in similar situations that you are. If you were a parent to a kid like you, what would you advise them today?
Wow, good question. I guess same really as I would advise to a parent which doesn't have a kid from necessarily that kind of trauma. Just having a kid that is, I mean, there's so many different types of trauma that we might see as lesser than escaping a war or leaving your family, but just having an alcoholic grandpa or something can be enough to make that kid have to go through hell. And I would say to parents is to meet children on their level, not reason them into your level, not explain your world to them, that, oh, that's okay, that's nothing to be sad about, come here, and explain mentally like all these strategies we have to make life digestible for us as adults. Instead, we go to where they are, whether it's in pain or in happiness, which they usually have both. We go to their level and we show them that it's fine to feel that, what they feel, instead of making them feel less like us.
Oh, I love that. I also love that you're kind of saying that it's regardless of what issue you have, that if you have an alcoholic grandpa or been through a war, like all trauma that you are facing is trauma, or not only trauma, everything you experience is through your visions, and you can't really compare it to anything else because you haven't been part of anything else.
And just an undigested experience, like you can have 3 people being in a car accident with totally different levels of trauma afterwards. One which will have physical issues the rest of their life, even though they might have not broken anything. Another which might have psychological issues and sleeping problem for the rest of their life and develop some immune disorder because of all the stress. And one that cried their ass out during the first period and actually don't carry so much. So, or goes to boxing and got some of the energies out. You never know really, but unprocessed whatever it's fear or anxiety or feelings or sorrow, whatever remains unprocessed has to be met eventually, or it expresses in another way. And that's why, I mean, we have to go to where they are.
Yeah.
I mean, many ways they could explain to me, you know, this war has nothing to do with you. It's, you know, it's fine. Nothing's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
But if I experience fear, I experience fear. It doesn't matter how they explain it. I would say these intellectualizations,
Yeah.
which we think works for us as adults, actually does not allow us to go to where children experience these things from.
Yeah.
And that is something I would have wished, and I wish now that I can give to my children, to experience what they communicate to me from where they are, not
Yeah.
from my pair of goggles and
Yeah.
interpretations.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. It is interesting, though, based on both the explanation and what you said before, because you said initially that you don't really have that much trauma from these experiences. How do you think, or why do you think that is?
No, I'm not conscious
Okay.
of what traumas came from that. I mean, in my research of human experience, I've realized we're so much more sensitive than we think on each level, so much more receptive. And I mean, let's say for my mom have also told me for a period during her pregnancy, I was not wanted always. That can, I realize now that can affect a child, even though we're in the belly. And so according to our neuroscience doesn't make so much difference, but I think that's all bullshit. We're affected by every intention, every energy.
Yeah.
And also after I came out, you know, C-section, just that, we don't know what that does when the actual individual don't choose and don't start to push voluntarily to come out.
Yeah.
And it's suddenly brought out. So all these things, and you know, pollution, there is so many stuff that can have been the reason for some of this stuff that have happened in my life. But then there are the obvious stuff. There is a stress in going away from your family. There is a stress of growing up with only one person that is again also carrying a lot of stuff. There is these obvious parts, but I can't really say this is the source of my trauma, the war in Iran or these things. It was, as a whole, life experience. I guess this whole period brought into my system as kind of suffering that superficial things could not deal with. But I cannot really remember or say like it was this event.
No, that makes sense. So you came to Sweden then, and you started like integrating into the Swedish society. Tell us about that part.
Yeah, that was interesting, and I still have, you know, some very beautiful both memories and almost like a perspective on how grateful I was for Sweden's respect to children, which was, I think, for you guys, it's like it's natural. It's like you would frown if it's not like that somewhere, but you're so used to it. But for me, there was such a beautiful part of life that there was a kind of open attention to children, not only like, oh, you're just a child and you just learn everything we know and we know. There was this open attention for me when I went to school, how if I fighted, they didn't just like, stop doing that, it's wrong. It's like, oh, how come you fight? They really looked at me and were interested, because there is this, I guess, this core faith in that children don't want to behave like that. It's not like it's a broken child. There is a reason behind that behavior. So I remember that as a very beautiful part, almost like I feel part of what I do now is to give back to a kind of healing that part of Sweden did for me.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So yeah, that is a very beautiful part I remember from coming here. And the integration for immigrants was way different back then. This was 88, and we had a very beautiful integration, I would say, where they set us up to meet Swedish families that were interested in immigrants. and they helped us discover IKEA.
Perfect.
We met an old lady that enjoyed just, see new kinds of people, new kinds of humans with different skin color and different backgrounds, and she made cookies for us, and we had tea or coffee with her. And it was all, and even in school, when they realized I was very allergic to religion teachings, having escaped religion, so instead they got an intern to come there, and during those classes play other games with me where I could get rid of some of my anger and reactions, and which was just like a beautiful process of invitation, like come to this game now, you're welcome to the Swedish game, and we make sure you come into this, which what I hear today is not really the case. I'm very grateful for that reception here. So I had a beautiful coming to Sweden, but it was in the background, scary, since I didn't have a tribe here. It was, I don't know if one can relate, some people can, but if you're with one parent, and they're human too, they can have their difficult days or weeks. My mom was called from Iran and told that her best friends were executed every now and then. Meanwhile, her parents called and said, it's all your fault that you did this demonstration and you did this revolution, and before that was so good. And so she had guilt and all these difficult phone calls. This is again my version, what I remember. And hearing these stories, and I saw what it did to her, and she still tried to be a good parent, but I mean, it's impossible, How could she be a good parent in a new country without a job, with all this guilt and difficult phone calls? Living in that was, I realize now, required a lot.
I really understand that. And like, what was your relationship? Because your dad had to go back then, or
they were divorced since I was one.
Yeah.
But he came once to Sweden, tried to get together with my mom. She didn't want to, and then, which was also difficult, I remember. But then he went back to Iran. He got a new wife, but he still wanted to live close to me. So he came with his new family, with a newborn, and stayed in Sweden for 2 years. And they tried to get a permanent residency during a period where it was quite easy to get that. But for some reason, even maybe some from his part, maybe was not totally satisfied here. Difficulty with the winters and the cold culture. So for whatever reason, they had to go back. And being 9, and with, I think, some blame on him that he didn't really tell me about the whole situation. I thought it was my fault. Which was quite heavy, because I really felt good with him around. So when he was sent back, they told me that I had to have a session with a psychologist, which would conclude if I need my father to be in Sweden, or if I'm okay without. And I remember during this session, I was so afraid to say the wrong things that I hide underneath the table. And that became
quite a lot of pressure to put on a kid.
And I think there was other things that decided, but this is the story I attached to at that time. I thought it was a big part, was my fault that my father and his new family, which I got very close to, was not allowed to stay. So that was very heavy. And this was in Mariestad, and as they got sent home, I was sent to Stockholm, and this was a very heavy part. This is, by the way, when I developed all my allergies.
Really?
During this time, I remember.
Interesting.
Quite. I mean, most allergies are developed in some kind of intense stress, I would say. But I remember quite closely that Swedish summers was the most beautiful thing, and suddenly during this summer I started sneezing for some reason, and an interesting side
side
note.
story. Yeah. But it's kind of interesting just to kind of build on that a bit, that I think sometimes we are trying so hard to protect our children so we don't tell them everything.
Yeah.
But because we don't tell them everything, they create their own stories.
Exactly.
I found a few of these from my childhood where I only knew part of a story, so that became like the story that I told myself.
Yeah.
And then as an adult now, I realized, oh, but it was all these other things to it. Yeah.
And I mean, again, I didn't know it was okay for my father. There were some things positive about going back to Iran, where he had a job and family and other stuff. And I don't know what he told in their interviews with the immigration agency, and like I have no idea about all the other stuff. The only thing I remembered is that they said this is an important talk, and then they went back. I was like, okay, so 1 + 1. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I had an important talk, and they went back, so it's my fault.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Did you have any siblings except for the half?
Yeah, my father has 2 new.
Okay.
So one was born while they were here in Sweden. One was born before they came. And
okay.
I'm very close to them.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
So then Navid becomes a teenager.
Yeah.
Yeah. How was that?
Yeah, I came to, I guess, I started in Solna in some school, and I found very amazing friends, which I'm still very close to this day. So over 30 something years ago. And I remember though, from having lost both family several times and from all the moving around, I remember deciding that this time I don't want to lose whoever comes close to me.
Oh, yeah.
I was 10, but it's just like, it's one of the decisions you make. But I realized it actually created a deep, structure in me to become very close with the people and really do everything for the relationships to be there, in good or bad. Like, it's not only positive. It was beautiful to, how much intimacy and how close I got to everyone, but also, again, sometimes you have to put boundaries, which I which I didn't, because I was too afraid of losing them. But it's been colored by this. But I in a sense created or became a part of a tribe of very good friends, which was something I longed for. So I think maybe not only for me, but for some other people with similar maybe backgrounds in this group of friends, we became each other's extended family to some degree. So that was a good period, I would say, my teens there. And on the other side, now we're talking about the emotional parts of life. On the other side, where I was not triggered, I was very sporty. I've been very well with football and floorball, the Swedish sport, and did a lot of sports. And I think also it was a way to connect to my father, which called me from Iran now and then. And we didn't have, for me, it was difficult to speak with him.
Yeah.
Not only language barrier, but also difficulty with culture. I didn't know what to respond when he said some things, but I could always say, like, I scored a few goals this weekend and we won. So
it became a way to connect.
Yeah, and the more success I had in the sports, the happier he was next time he called. So I actually became very good.
Yeah,
much because of that.
Did you have any other like adult relationship or mentors or so on the side of your mom?
Not really. I mean, there was she not a romantic relationship, but she had a friend which always have felt very safe to have around to a certain degree. But no, someone to guide me or help me or discuss things and explore parts of being a young adult. No, didn't have much. After a depressive period, I tried to go to the curator. How would you counselor?
Yes, counselor. Student counselor, maybe. Yeah.
Exactly, and it was very disappointing. It felt like very amateur. Like, try to think positive, and it's gonna be fine. You're young, all these things. It's gonna it's going to change. It's like, yeah, you're talking about, things that don't exist now, and in some eventual future, I will not feel like this, but it's not helping me in any ways. I feel most of those things are just numbing. Like, don't feel like you feel right now because someday you will not. So I am very disappointed with, and that's also what I expected. But yeah, I was searching a lot on myself, like by myself. But I think since I had an allergy towards religion, I went a very cold approach to trying to get help. Like, I studied physics to almost like in a dissociative manner. Like, oh, all my emotions right now are just electric firings in some neurons, and there is also no free will or randomness, so it's just all deterministic firing being, so in a sense that intellectualization of reality made everything feel less. Like if I was depressed or sad, I was just like, yeah, that's the way the universe is doing right now, nothing to do with anything. And somehow this perspective made me feel less of the human emotions.
Interesting.
And also somehow I became quite smart from all of these studies. And I mean, I realize today it's a lot of people hiding in those explanations. So it's helpful with what I do today, that I went through that journey. But yeah, I went a very materialistic, skeptical journey towards trying to discover the underlying truth of everything. That has been, no matter if I've been in good times, again, I've been talking about more of the difficulties, but in general, I've been a very happy person. And whether it was in good or bad times, I always had this almost like Truman Show thing for like underlying feeling that there was some truth or something. Like there was, and since my mind was so much into what I thought was science, to be honest, I only looked in that realm. And in that realm, the truth is almost equal to an equation, like something that would explain existence. Like the unified theory of quantum physics and blah, 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 blah. And so I was searching there. I was looking at more philosophical approaches, but grounded in science and quantum physics, and studied at night now and then, and not studied at reading a lot of books, but really digging into the deepest conclusions which scientists reach from this information we find. And so that was always happening in the background, trying to understand what is behind all this existence. And eventually that road, that for me now very narrow road which is only a part of the human mind, like the intellect, the structured intellect, that narrow road comes to an end. And it gets very uncomfortable, because beyond that end, which part of quantum physics actually shows you, like reality cannot be measured. There is no objective, the way that Newton would say, like there is no objective reality in the way that we discuss. It's very uncomfortable for the intellect. But for me, it was like an invitation to leave that small way of looking at life.
Interesting.
So it was an invitation to, okay, and the big problem was consciousness. That is called the big problem of science. So that became my highest interest.
Interesting.
And which allowed me to explore, okay, but then who, if not the Western scientists, which I was looking up to, who looks at this consciousness more purely? And then I got open to Buddhism and the Tibetan Book of the Dead and some other realms, which very much more directly looked at this very essential dimension of life, and that's again.
And like, since you said that you had this like allergy to religion before, how come you were open to this?
Because Buddhism didn't talk about anything religious. There was just meditate on this and you will see.
And what is religion for you? Like, what is the definition?
And I think still I have allergy to when human project on God. When we think God, like let's say human minds are judgmental, and then we say, oh, God is the ultimate judger.
Okay, yeah.
And so on. Like when we have values, like this is right, this is wrong, we say God have those values. Like that is for me, I'm allergic to that kind of behavior. We do the same thing with nature. You know, nature wants this, nature wants that. It's like the humans projecting their own psyche on something. And that's what I was allergic to during this time too. And Buddhism didn't do that.
No.
Didn't talk that the kind of Buddhism that I was attracted to didn't talk about like, yeah, there is a man somewhere which has these judgments and, you know, they just like, meditate on consciousness and see, let your thoughts go. At the same time, I also discovered I kept Tolle, you know, the regular path.
Yeah.
And
that's a few people go down.
Yeah. Exactly. So, but let's say I was on jet fuel.
Okay.
So it's the regular path, but I
Yeah.
was like, for me, when I discover something like that, there is nothing more important.
Yeah, okay.
There is like my attraction to the ultimate truth. As soon as it finds, oh, this could lead somewhere, I go. Doesn't matter if I have to stay up a few nights or if I have to sacrifice something. So then it started again, very much with Buddhism and meditation. And this lovely life reflected that by inviting me, like bringing new people into my life, bringing new situations and travels to new places. And like this seeking was answered by
the universe.
The universe, yeah. So a lot of, like, if I'm allowed to talk openly, during this period, someone tricked me in Thailand to take mushrooms. So I was not open to this, especially being so much into sports. I thought this would ruin my health and so on. I barely drank anything.
How old were you around this time?
23.
Yeah.
And like against every kind of drug. I really bought the whole thing school said that if you try one drug once, you're going to end up on the street. And, so that was my stance. And suddenly, without knowing it, someone gave me a drink in Thailand, which had mushrooms. And I still didn't know what mushrooms would be, even if he would have said.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And like so many people say, it was an eye-opener. It literally, the kind of mind I had was shown to me as like a pair of glasses, a very small pair of glasses, which I can put on and see reality through and pretend that is it. But I can also take them off and see what is beyond those glasses. I realized my mind was not showing truth, it was showing its own projections. And that was literally mind-blowing. Because I saw the infinity and the innocence of the real reality and could easily sense when I was being with that or being in my own world. They had like different theme music. You can tell this is what life feels like when you put your glasses on, and this is what it feels like when you take them off. So that was a huge lesson. And I even while it happened, I had no idea I was under the effect. The next day I realized,
that was
like that weird reggae bar that gave us happy shakes and the Dutch guy that tricked us was not a regular fruit shake.
That's hilarious.
That explains why we were up under the stars and painting like hearts and stars in the sand, sending to everyone we love until 7 o'clock in the morning. It was like, Okay. I suddenly understood all hippies.
Yeah. All of a sudden it made sense. I want to go back to this moment, but I kind of also, I'm so curious, like, when did you start looking for truth and what triggered that?
Difficult to say exactly, but part of it, I guess, I won't be able to tell you in words. Maybe it's on the level which we would call karmic. That like there is a resonance as soon as a movie hinted towards, like, some people have this, when you watch The Matrix, or some things are pointing to a deeper truth that is unseen by our society. It resonated beyond, just like, it was just not just like interest. It was not like, oh, that would be interesting, but I'm also interested in sports. It's not on that level.
No, okay.
It was just like something very deep in me got activated by any conversation like that, by any state pointing to that. And I had such experiences, staying up too late sometimes and watching the stars, and suddenly during, when you laugh with your friends because you're so tired and you go kind of crazy, it's an altered state. And in those states, I could see beyond the mind, and it showed me there is something beyond. But I didn't know how to reach, how to see beyond my mind in everyday life. But I knew there was something beyond what my mind could explain to itself.
Interesting. All right. Okay. And you go back and you kind of, like, in this experience then in Thailand, that is the first time you can kind of grasp it for a longer time, or?
Yeah, I would say it mostly poked hole because I was trying to grasp the truth with my limited glasses, with my mind.
Yeah.
It was like it felt like from that state, having a calculator
Yeah.
and trying to explain fire to someone with the calculator.
Yeah.
That's how limited my intellect felt
Yeah.
when trying to grasp truth. Even though truth was available to see at all times, my intellect's version was just a projection of itself. So, yeah, that's
Yeah, it's so interesting also, still trying to explain it with words.
Yeah.
Like, words are so limiting.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they're amazing for what they're made for.
Yeah.
Like saying how to get somewhere
Yeah.
in Stockholm, or all kind of work stuff and earthly related things.
Yeah.
But when it comes to feelings, when it comes to love, when it comes to existence, things that are larger than the patterns of earth,
Yeah.
this mind is not made for that. And by putting it just down, letting it rest,
Yeah.
suddenly you make yourself a huge favor, because then truth is revealed.
Beautiful. So after this experience, what happened then? How did you?
I kind of, like, when it comes to my practical life, went back to, I had a graphic design job, art director in a startup, and had quite a normal, back to normal life, sporting, but it was, it was a hole in my, the boat of my intellect was sinking. It was like, I could not pretend that I know much.
Yeah.
After seeing how little my intellect knows, I could no longer pretend, So I had to find ways of going deep again. I ended up in Nepal. I met shamans. I've discovered some meditation techniques, and eventually that place, which was revealed to me partly in Thailand, partly by other states, that place started to become more frequently visited. And to a degree, when I realized, and it's a big part of what I teach now, that is our natural state. I realized my ordinary state, that which I hold on and grasp at life with my mind, that is quite a neurotic state. That is not, what we're born as, and what we are, let's say, if I speak in this language, not we're meant to do all the time. It's very common in the Western world and in the modern mind to constantly look at things with your intellect, but it's a strain. And I realized to be able to look at stuff without your intellect, is so much more natural, so much more direct, so much more intimate. And the whole thing is that it has a twist. I realized my intellect was a protection against that intense reality.
Interesting.
Even though it pretended I'm looking for reality,
Yeah.
that looking part of me, let's say those glasses, was a protection against reality, because reality was so intense, so sensitive. My own emotions, without talking to myself in the mind, feeling my emotions was too scary. So I explained them to myself. To experience life on earth and to be aware that death is coming is too scary for my mind. So I explain it to myself, and so on. So I realized in the end the truth which my mind said it was looking for was what it was avoiding.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Such a good description. So I'm wondering how we should take this to kind of guide the listeners best. But can you explain a little bit what you teach now, so that we then can kind of journey back to how you got to that?
Yeah, in a sense, I guide people very simply to bring their attention to the part of them, the deepest part of them, which is not the intellect. The intellect is very deep. It is an active part of us which is required for everyday life, but it is not who we are. And I do a process called self-inquiry, but not a mental, not like we don't sit and inquire into who we are, into ourselves mentally by who am I? Am I my mind? Am I a spirit on a journey of learning? We have all these ideas. And the funny thing with those ideas is that they shift depending on our hormonal cycle, on our mood, on how hungry we are. So all these self-images, these mental self-images, they come and go.
Yeah.
But there is something that does not come and go about ourselves.
Yeah.
So I help people to bring their attention to the part of their I, their self, which is not coming and going and shifting, which is not an opinion or a position in a question or a name, like that which everyone recognizes is there in their dreams, in their waking state, in their altered state, in sickness, that which is always I, but it's not a voice, it's not a position. So I guide people there so they get a direct experience of what I talk about here. Because again, talking I can do for hours, but showing for a moment is way more powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and it's so interesting, because when you go there, there are no words to describe it. So it's very good that you kind of describe the journey there, because it's hard to explain what it is.
Yeah, impossible. And that's the whole thing. You don't want to be able to explain it.
No, that's true. And to kind of go back a bit to what you said, is that you, like, in Thailand you visited it once, and then you were kind of going on a journey to like be there more times of the day, or like more frequently. How often are you there now?
Now it doesn't feel like I would not be able to describe it in the same way. Now I'm aware of that I am always only, and I've always been there.
Yeah.
But just like when we enter different games, let's say we play Monopoly on a table, we enter a certain state of identification with a small figure on the table. We enter different states which brings about a different experience. So now I'm aware that I'm always there, but I play different games here. I can go, like when we talk about my childhood, I look different than when we talk about this. I'm in a different state now. So to give you authentically about my childhood, I have to go into that story. So in a sense, I feel I momentarily leave or forget about my essential nature to go in and tell you in an honest and authentic way about my childhood, which I could feel as a victim for certain things.
Yeah.
And then when I stop, there is an pull back to, because that's the most effortless place to be, into my true self. So that pull is there. As soon as I don't distract myself from it, if I don't go into a game or a context with you, that's slowly my attention is drawn back there until I enter something again.
Interesting. It's so deep what you're saying that I'm a bit freezing now.
I'm used to that in podcasts.
Cool. Good. And I think it's also because we are in a podcast trying to intellectualize something that is not really intellectualizable, if that's a word. But I mean, having gone through what you have gone through as a kid and stuff, and then going to this journey to like refinding your true essence, how has that kind of helped you or guide you in your everyday life as in the character that you are?
Well, I would say, if I have to say parts which are relatable, because in some parts it's just a sense of like the magic and freedom I felt as a child is slowly coming back. That is one of the movements, but that's very difficult to relate to. Like not everyone felt in the same way, but it feels like by escaping into my mind, I lost that magic and freedom of this life. And by being able to put my mind aside, knowing who I truly am, that magic starts to be smelled again. Like, it's like, oh, this place. So that is one part for those who can relate. But when it comes to more practical ways, I would say there is such a safety in knowing one's essence that it would rug pulls certain types of fear. Not like the fear of heights or the fear of a snake or something, but certain personal fears that are more from trauma or they're just cultural fears, conflicts and stuff. I realize my fears are not there as much because I know what I really am will endure whatever these emotions can bring. So I'm less afraid of any experience. Again, I can sense my body. If I see a snake, a viper recently, my body freezes, and so on. But those are not the kinds of fear I talk about. Other fears, like where the personal, we all have our strategies, like avoiding certain confrontations, avoiding loneliness, avoiding disliking our body in the mirror, avoiding certain parts of life. Like, no, those are so horrible, I don't want to experience that. So we put so much sensors into our experience, like, I don't want to experience this. And now, knowing what I have discovered in this, I say, bring it on. not that I'm torturing myself to bring on horrible experiences, but I remember, and it's most obvious in my relationship with my beautiful wife, that I always try to keep her in a certain state so I didn't have to experience blame, so I feel guilt, and I didn't have to experience certain things. I wanted her to be in a certain way, to only be with her when she's in a certain, only listen to her when she is in a certain way, and defend myself otherwise. But now it was like, after I discovered this, I was like, okay, shoot.
Be whatever you need to be.
Like you feel I've been a horrible boyfriend, go for it. Let it hurt me. And it did. But I can take it. Not what I thought I was before, but what I discovered that I am, can stay with it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So when you would recommend people to go into this kind of self-inquiry journey with you, is that what would that be the kind of the benefit of succeeding?
Again, these are the things that the mind can, be lured in by. Oh, I would like to be like that. But I mean, it's
You
so much
already
more
are.
beautiful than that. It is like, I cannot explain. Like, it feels like coming home and being on the most magical adventure, even when it feels like shit. And I cannot compare that to a personal gain.
Yeah.
It was like I had sessions where a woman said like, oh, I have this important thing to do, but I also feel like I should join your session, but I might lose $10,000 if I don't go there for that class. Like,
Yeah.
and I say, you be here on the session, and if you regret, I help you to the level I can. I didn't have $10,000,
Yeah.
but I help you to the level I can to repay
Regain.
you.
Yeah.
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 And at the end of the 2 hour session, she laughed about that. She thought anything was more important than knowing who she are.
Yeah.
So this is not done for personal gain.
Yeah.
Even though it does have some personal benefits. It is, we're the most accurate, I would say, analogy right now would be, let's say you're eternally lost in the Monopoly game around the table. All there is to existence, you think, is those streets, the dices you throw, the figurine you identify with, and the other people around. You think that is it.
Yeah.
And then one of the figurines is played by someone who knows this is not all. Someone who actually went to the bathroom, came back and realized this is just a table of Monopoly game.
Yeah.
So the other figurines ask your figurine, what do you gain from from going to the bathroom and coming back? And the figurine cannot show off any hotel, any more money, any progress, any skipping jail. My avatar don't have so much to show for it. Some lighter nervous system, friendlier, but not too much to show for it to your figurine. But the part of you that would go to the bathroom and come back would smile to me and say thank you.
Oh my God, I love that analogy. I since I've been to both parts, I love it even more. I'm wondering if someone who has never been there will understand it, but I hope
think
it will.
everyone understands this intuitively.
Okay.
Even if their mind is like, what is it I'm understanding? Their intuition knows. Everyone has been away from the table enough times. But not everyone today would be ready to go again. We have our turns to leave the table and to come back with a smile, but it's not always. And this is weird for my mind to accept this, because I would expect like, oh, everyone. But my experience is that there are some who are super ready. Like some people I meet and I barely get to start guiding them and they're out.
They already left the table.
Yeah, they just kick the table down for everyone else too. And then,
okay, perfect.
And then there are some people who like, they look up once, but straight back to the table and they play. And they might, can I see you next year? I'm going to look back up again. And it's just different rhythm. And there is no rush. Beyond the table, there is no time. So.
But how would you, for someone who is maybe, starting off as you with the more science-based approach, like, and maybe are still stuck there, because that is often the discussion I'm in with people, and I don't know that much about the science stuff. I never went through that path. So, like, how would you talk to a person like that?
I would say that they use the same skepticism, which is an amazing thing. I love the skepticism part of science. But what I recognize from looking from a different perspective is that science doesn't use its own skepticism on itself.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, because there is parts of science that are so essential that are unexplained. For example, we accept that we can explain things through the concept of matter. Like, okay, the brain is made of matter and it behaves in a certain way, and chemical reactions with evolutionized biology, whatever, has led to chemical reactions that create the experience of consciousness. So we say matter creates consciousness. But then if you, instead of arguing for that, what is matter? So look in the other direction, and we see matter. The first thing that comes up in our minds is picture of atoms. But some who have studied more say, no, the atoms, they're not atoms. They look like atoms on a certain magnification, but they're actually quarks or whatever, electrons, neutrons, protons, that are dancing in a way that it looks like round balls. But it doesn't stop there. If you go to them, the electron itself is not a round ball. It is the moving and vibration of, and then they don't have any more answers. Again, they have quarks, but you zoom into that.
And the same thing's just happening. Yeah.
That fractals, which you are familiar with. Eventually you end up with that matter is a behavior of an underlying, if we want to call it energy or source or field, but it's something that is not matter, that is behaving like matter. So how can you then explain consciousness with matter when matter is not found yet? So if you turn skepticism, if you want to be a skeptic, fine, don't buy every bullshit religion and spirituality idea that comes out, but also look at your own theory. Does it hold up? Like, we just say Big Bang and it's like, okay, that explains it. No, doesn't explain anything. Also, again, science is based partly on the fact that randomness would exist to some degree. That's how we explain a lot of stuff. That is also, again, something we haven't found yet. And so I would say to someone who's skeptic, keep on being skeptic, but look at your own closet. Like, what's in there that doesn't hold up? And if you dig properly, the way you would dig for, like, if you're arguing with someone, you're pretty good at, I looked at like the core of your belief and it's not true. Look at the core of your own belief.
That's really interesting.
So
since going down on this path and discovering like your true essence, what has changed in your life on a like physical, mental, energetic, emotional level?
Oh, wow. I don't really think of it like that. So it was a big question coming like that. But I opening, when I was identified with the mind. So you're going to realize the pattern that I have to turn it around. I came back to my natural state. Before that, I was in a neurotic state of holding on and identifying with a mind and self-image. So what have changed is that I'm no longer spending all my energy doing that. Like, a mind has a certain philosophy and politics, and it identifies with that and therefore has to protect it. Now it's like, okay, I can sit with you and I can be totally with your politics. I can sit with the next person. It's like, oh, but that makes sense too. And I don't have to hold on to a perspective which I identify with. The same thing with some other stuff. And it's a relaxation that feels very natural, very flowy. And it also brings health, of course, better sleep. Like, when you don't have to defend your self-image, your nervous system comes down. We all know, even if we watch a movie, we know it's not me, but when we identify with the movie character, our nervous system reacts on behalf of that character, even though it's not real. The same thing with our ego. If we think I'm a Navid and I need people's love and I need to be in a certain way, my nervous system will react on that, which leads to poorer health, less good sleep, less trust, less playfulness. So I would say, it's not that I evolved in any way. I'm not, in a sense, sabotaging my health anymore.
Okay, interesting.
Which I did before I realized.
Oh, that's interesting. But out of curiosity, because you mentioned your allergies before, like, did any of them disappear or anything like that?
Some got, let's say, disappeared to 90%. Like, I had birch and apple and strawberries and some things I did react to, which disappeared to a certain mostly. But one is more the one that came when my father left, which is grass pollen.
Yeah.
That one is like 50% gone.
Okay.
Or something like that from the work when it was as is it worse.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is that if I talk or if I, let's say, focus more on this subject, or if I teach someone, or if I am conducting a class, it's totally gone.
Oh, interesting.
So there are certain states of Navid that are allergic, and other states that are not. And I know some doctors, I told them, please do a test on me with 1 hour difference. Like take a test and I will have like the red dots coming from the allergy test.
Yeah.
And I promise you in 1 hour, you take the same test and I will not have the reactions.
Oh, that's so interesting.
But it's, again, they don't want to waste time on that. It also undermines their models.
Yeah.
That a person is allergic or not.
Yeah, yeah.
Even though, again, they have the experience of, there are split personality people, where one of the personalities is deadly allergic to peanuts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the other one is not.
Oh, would you dare to try that?
Exactly. So that is another thing. But it's, again, it does have a lot of health benefits even in that realm. But then, since I've lived for so long with my allergies, they're kind of deeply ingrained in my cells. I think it's going to take maybe the rest of my life to get rid of.
Yeah. But it's still impressive that they kind of loosened up as much as they have.
But I think for everyone, allergies specifically and autoimmune diseases are stress related. And ego is very good at creating stress. So when my ego relaxes, also every autoimmune disease get less. IBS and, everything.
Yeah. So we've been talking now a bit about your childhood, how you kind of ended up in teaching, what you're teaching today, and how it kind of affects you as a person. Is there anything that you would like to share that we haven't discussed?
Yeah, I would actually like to. I haven't been thinking about that before you just asked the question, but it comes up in my heart as we talk.
Yeah.
If we see what I'm pointing to as a natural state, that we are what we truly are, all of us, all the listeners, you, me, what we truly are is just beyond our own intellect to grasp. That's it. We don't need to go deeper into it. That we are something that is deeper than the image we have of who we are. And if we can see that and we can connect on that level, we realize that all the things we look up to on earth, all the things we wish for, comes from that level. For example, peace. Now there is a few wars going on in the world. On the level of our mind, we can be Russian or Ukrainian, Israeli or Palestinian. We can be left or right on the level of our mind. But on the level of our essence, when we go there are no such things. The same thing with nature or environment and many things that we see like, oh, we humans have to take care of the environment. On the level of our essence, it's not we and nature. It is, you recognize the life you are in the tree you see. And therefore, you would only cut it down if it was really, really necessary and in the most respectful way. So many of the things and problems I see we fight and we try to find a political solution to or a practical solution to on the level of the identified mind. Let's say on the monopoly table, we are trying to connect deeply with each other. And why are we behaving so bad? Why doesn't this capitalism work? Why are we being enemies on the monopoly table? The moment we look up from the table and we look each other in the eyes for a few seconds, that conflict is gone. We see it for what it is and we can transcend it. And that is what my personality and my heart in my character would like to bring up. That this, I'm not teaching a spiritual evolving mechanism. I'm pointing us back to a very magical source from which most of our unnecessary dramas would disappear.
Yeah. It's such a good answer. I was recording this podcast or another podcast with my friend the other day, and I may have said that we have no problems in the world. And I think it may be a bit hard to interpret, but if I add in a clip from what you just said, they will understand me.
Yeah, we don't need to have the kinds of... I mean, drama is a part of existence, death, grief, and all of these, even conflict, We have so many different minds, and there has always been conflict. Even in a healthy body, there is a conflict between bacteria creating the immune system. Conflict is a part of it, even maybe war.
Yeah.
But we are making it into a perverted, exaggerated craziness.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those parts, the way the denial of what we're doing to the oceans, to the animals, to ourselves, to our own bodies, to our food we eat, like the denial part, the disgusting part. That I think everyone, let's say, would come aliens to Earth today, we would feel ashamed of some parts.
Yeah.
Not all wars that has been, but some parts of what we do as humans. Those, I see a huge healing potential.
Yeah.
By looking up from the Monopoly table, looking beyond your self-image and identifying with the life we share.
Yeah. Interesting. I forgot to ask you, I mean, with kind of your way of stepping back and like withdrawing into yourself, maybe this question is like self-answering, but I like to kind of share the perspective that everybody who is a teacher also works with their own stuff currently.
Yeah.
So what are you working with currently?
I guess for now, and it might be different in a week, but for now, I feel my children are amazing teachers in how they are constantly in the flow. Like how I learned from them to be so direct with my reactions and feelings and the way that is really beyond thought, and there is a trust, and I guess that trust was lacking in me, so I created, when a reaction and emotion came in me, there was this police checking if this one is okay. Is it okay to feel like this and express? And that creates an unflow.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of like traffic. If a police comes and stops a car, you're like, are you allowed here? The whole traffic stops.
Yeah.
And you're out of the flow. But if they don't, the whole thing flows. Yeah. So it's kind of like that in the emotional body of me, that usually whatever arises, there is an internal police that is checking it, even subconsciously. Is this okay? Should I express it? Should I not? How can I process? And then I see my children being in such a trust that whatever comes. They feel secure enough to just whatever comes. And they're not, like, one of them is not that young anymore. So it's not like, childish only. No. It's just a place of trust and being fine with, even if you express anger and someone is hurt and you are hurt and you regret, all is fine. So I love being with them and observing this and how it catches on in me.
Do you have any concrete examples in how it catched on to you?
Like what would be to me quite irrational timings of stuff. Like for example, if you watch a group of kids play, for some reason they all know when that game is over. It's not depending on what clock it is, or sometimes, of course, because a parent says it's time for food. Yeah. But they can play a certain game. Yeah. Let's say a children's party, they play, and suddenly it's over, and no adult can understand what you were all playing this now. Like, how can all of you do something differently? But they are in tune with a very subtle energy in the environment and the shifts, and they just go with that flow constantly. And that I have learned. Okay. And I even practice it, like during my classes, I get these subtle things to me, and I've been practicing for years now to actually express them, and they're totally irrational. I can just interrupt someone, which I'm programmed to not do. That's not an adult behavior. That's rude and disrespectful. But when it truly comes to me, the way it comes to my children, I trust that they want to be interrupted. like, or the moment needs this interruption, because I'm sitting there with no intentions.
Yeah.
I don't dislike the person or anything personal, but when the underlying energy says something or shows, I act. And it's proven the last 5 or 6 years, which I've done it properly, not one single time it has been out of place. So that is what I practically have learned from them.
Wow.
A lot.
Yeah.
To be open to the, I guess, intuition is one way of saying this, is pointing to this, but like trusting what wants to happen.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I have to take that with me, especially like when you're saying that it's that it can be seen as rude.
Yeah.
Like, I think that definitely would stop me.
Yeah, most of us.
Yeah,
it's very scary to take that step.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe not for me from when I was a kid, but from being an adult, like being like, this is how you should do stuff, and yeah. Thank you so much, Navid, for being on the podcast and sharing your story and putting words to a lot of things that are very hard to put words into. I'm very honored to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me here, and I must also thank you for it feels so flowy with the way you listen, the way you still guide the conversation. It was a lovely time being here.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.